records, which were mailed to troops around the globe from 1943 to 1949, were supposed to be destroyed following World War II, but some survived. We at the archives recently received several original V-discs as part of a donation. You can see our processing archivist, Graciela, on the right there holding one. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you see Lieutenant Colonel Louis Welch. It was his family who actually donated the V-discs and a Victrola and other records to us. But this is how the V-discs came to be a part of the work that we do at the Springsteen Archives. All right, before we talk any more about the V-discs specifically, let's just set the stage a little bit, right? A little refresher on our 20th century military history. Of course, World War I was the Great War. Rages in Europe, 1914 to 1918. The United States involved from 1917 to 1918. Some 4 million Americans served in uniform during World War I. About 2 million made it over to Europe. About 1 million saw combat. The American entry into the war in 1917 decisively changed the course of that conflict, and the Allies win. People around the globe hoped that World War I would be the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, we know that is not the case. And by the 1930s, fascism is rising around the globe. In 1939, we see World War II break out with the Nazi invasion of Poland. The United States professes a position of neutrality, much as it had early in the World War I conflict. But again, we are drawn into a second global cataclysm. Ultimately, some 16 million Americans will serve in uniform during the broad World War II era. Now, while the war is going on, just coincidentally, the largest union of musicians in the country, the American Federation of Musicians, they go on strike against the major recording companies. It has nothing to do with the war. They go on strike because it's a little complicated, but they're having a dispute over how royalties are paid. They don't like these newfangled jukeboxes. They fear that they are going to hurt working musicians, right? So there's this disagreement, and the American Federation of Musicians, they go on strike. And you see the headline here in Downbeat magazine, "All recording stops today." And here's another headline, this one from the New York Times. It reads, "Musicians to end making of records." It says the War Production Board will not have to worry about conserving shellac and other materials used in the production of records because the strike is going to happen. So the strike forbids union musicians from recording any sessions for major labels, including Columbia, RCA, Victor, and Decca Records. The strike is going to last until November of 1944, over 2 years after it starts. This is another New York Times headline, "Ban on records off. CBS to pay fees," and they talk about how the strike was ultimately concluded with some concessions given to the musicians. But while the strike is going on, there are some folks in the Army's Recreation and Welfare section who decide, let's bring major recording artists into studios to record music exclusively for the troops. And so it starts with the Army, and then it's going to be so successful that it spreads out to the other branches of the military. So the military is going to record these V-discs, as they are called, and ship them overseas to boost morale at a time when some servicemen, and now women too, were away from home for years at a time, risking their lives to save the world from fascism. I cannot express enough how important morale is in times of war. And historically, a tremendous amount of time and energy goes into trying, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, to keep up the morale of our fighting men and women. So, as we've noted, they are going to call these recordings V-discs. And the letter V, of course, stands for
Victory.
Victory, right? We love female, we love to add a V to everything in the World War II period. So you can see just a sample of some V-disc labels here, these beautiful, colorful labels. Included on the V-discs were sometimes just radio broadcasts from the United States, sometimes live concerts, music recorded in studio, and it really spanned multiple genres on purpose. They wanted to appeal, some 16 million or so in uniform, people coming from all walks of life, all different geographical regions of the United States. They wanted to have music for everybody. And so on the V-discs, you can find big band music, jazz, country, opera, church music, marches. There's really something for everyone in the V-disc collection. This is just an archival document talking about the V-discs. It says, the Special Service Division presents to the Armed Forces this preview of the V-disc, a new feature of the music section, athletic and recreation branch. It is planned to make monthly releases of phonograph records, not only of the latest and best in popular songs and marches, but also the finest classical, concert, military, sacred, folk, and patriotic music, so that the individual interests of the men in the armed forces may be fulfilled. V-discs can be played over post-public address systems, for drill, in the service clubs, mess halls, movie theaters, over camp carrier radio, and many other places. And so this is one of the earliest documents rolling out the V-disc program. Here's some news coverage about bands getting in to start recording. This one is about Hal McIntyre's band cutting their first V-discs made before a live audience. Some 8 million copies of over 8,000 different recordings were produced during the war and occupation years. Many of them at the RCA Victor facility in Camden, New Jersey, which you can see on the map here. In fact, the first V-discs are believed to have shipped from Camden October 1st, 1943. So that's a little history. For the rest of my talk, it's going to be like half talk, half listening session. Because how can we talk about all of this great music without listening to it, right? So hopefully the tech works. Let's see how we do.
Hello, fellas. This is the town talking to you. We're making some V-discs every day. At this time, we'd like you to meet Little Jimmy Russell.
Hello, fellas. I'm trying to beat out some boogie for you today, and I hope you like it. Did you ever dream lucky, baby, and wake up cold and Did you ever dream lucky, baby, and wake up cold and You didn't have a dollar, somebody had your woman.
I always hate when I have to stop in the middle of a song, but we don't have time to listen to the full songs. So that was New Jersey's own Count Basie, who I referenced earlier and who you can see here. Other V-disc recordings by our local hero Count Basie included the GI Stomp, the Basie Boogie, Jammin' on a V-disc, On the Upbeat, and more. He recorded both with his famous orchestra and partnered with other musicians to create beautifully unique music that might not have happened if not for the special circumstances of the strike and the V-Disc program. As I noted at the beginning, there are other popular stars like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, Artie Shaw, Tommy Dorsey, Billie Holiday, Perry Como, the Andrews Sisters, Burl Ives, Gene Autry, Nina Horn, Judy Garland, Peggy Lee, Ella Fitzgerald. I could go on and on and on. It really was the biggest named artists of the day. Here, for another example, is Bing Crosby.
Bing Crosby with a fast freedom from home. The way of V-Disc. We thought you'd like to hear a few of the songs that are kicking around the interstate. You fly high, apple pan down, it makes your eyes bug out. You come and say howdy. You fly high, an apple pan down, it I never get enough of that one. You fly high, an apple pan down, it makes the sun come out. For the heavens are cloudy. You fly high, an apple pan down, it I never get enough of that one. Mama, when you beg, Mama, I don't want cake, Mama, for my sake. Go to the oven and make some apple oven. You fly high.
Okay, sorry, Bing. I love the music. I love it, but what I have enjoyed most are those little messages that they record at the beginning that really, we'll see in a few slides, meant so much to the men and women who received these. So speaking of receiving the V-Discs, you can see some servicemen here. They were thrilled to have the V-Discs, which, as we noted, boosted morale and provided a link to home. They would often drop or deliver the V-Discs as well as record players, portable record players, that they could play them on in the field if they weren't, at a hospital or service club or something like that. We can go back in the historical record and actually find fan mail that attests to the program's popularity. For example, one Sergeant William G. Fuss wrote, quote, "We have been overseas for almost 2 years, and we have not heard many popular songs. The V-Disc releases were received very gladly, as we had not had any music for about 8 months. The outfit was on Guadalcanal for quite some time, and we wish to express our appreciation for the entertainment you have made possible for us." And these are actual newspaper articles. So you see V-Discs at the front, music time on Guadalcanal. Down on the bottom, it says these overseas GIs listen to their favorite swing music over an Army broadcasting outlet. Here's another example. This sergeant pens a note of thanks, quote, "On behalf of the boys who are listening to V-Discs over our ship's public address system." Another writes from the hospital that, quote, "I wish you could see all the happiness you have brought to the boys. We can only go out in the afternoons, and now for the first time, we have some entertainment for the lonely evenings and mornings." This newspaper article says, "Music-minded Marines in the Marshalls. A session of solid sending attracts leathernecks to the phonograph at a Marshall Islands encampment of the 4th Marine Air Wing. The V-Disc library is a busy corner of the unit's recreation hall, where Marines find diversion in the latest recorded hit songs or the soothing strains of a classical selection. A 20-record kit is selected monthly by an Army-Navy board and sent to stations all over the world. Recording artists donate their services." Let's take a listen to another selection. I think many of you will know this romantic tune.
on the road speaking for my dad and myself, fellows, hoping that you enjoy our particular brand of music. We are all proud and feeling that we are doing just a little something for you fighting men by making this V-disc. Until the next time then, here we go. I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me. So deep in my heart, you're really a part of me. I've got you under my skin.
Perhaps the most fantastical reports of the popularity of the V-discs come from the Washington Post in December of 1944. An article shared, quote, when a portable surgical hospital recently became isolated in the Burma jungle, its only supply line was by parachute. One of the first things dropped was a hand-wound phonograph and a box of records, both boogie-woogie and classical. That's how important music has become in war, end quote. The article quoted the hospital commandant as saying, you cannot appreciate what the general feeling was. Since the machine and records arrived, it has worked constantly. And you can see the headline here, V-disc dropped by parachute, help soldier morale on fronts. Here's another case.
Hi, fellas. This is Tommy Dorsey. The boys and I are about to slip you a bit of that sentimental jive music on these big discs. We hope that you'll get your kicks listening and that you'll be back with us real soon.
So it's fascinating and I think inspiring that so many major recording artists so enthusiastically answered Uncle Sam's call and that music meant so much to the troops. It's also interesting to note that the armed forces pioneered the widespread use of vinyl for records. You may have recalled an earlier article I showed here talked about how we wouldn't be using shellac to make records because of the strike. Up till this point, most commercial records were made of shellac, which was a relatively fragile material. There were difficulties because of blockades sourcing shellac to make records, and so a decision is made that the V-discs are going to be produced on vinyl. And while it's adopted initially for the V-disc program, it will be so successful that it will become the industry standard after the war. You can see the headline here, Armed Forces getting pliable records now. And sometimes they talk about them being unbreakable. That's certainly not literally the case, but they were certainly more durable than the earlier shellac records and much more able to withstand being parachuted into the jungles of Burma, for example, as we discussed earlier. Here's another listen.
I can't put my heart on a platter, but if I could, you'd hear this old record saying, "Here's all my love from Frank." I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny, but then you're near me. I'm in the mood for love. Heaven is in your eyes. Bright as the stars we're under. Oh, is it any wonder I'm in the mood for love? I stop to think of whether this little dream might fade. We put our hearts together. Now we are one. I'm not afraid.
Now, as I referenced earlier, post-war, the V-discs were supposed to be destroyed because the strike ended, the artists were back under contract, and they weren't supposed to be out there, recording, and they didn't want the records to be sold in any commercial manner. And so the idea was always that post-war, whenever that may be, they were going to be rounded up and destroyed. Many were. The government did really make a good faith effort at recording them up, at destroying them. They even had sting operations where they were, going and trying to confiscate black market collections of the discs. But as I said, they produced millions of them. So with millions in circulation, it was difficult. Some original V-discs stay abroad. Some are smuggled back to the United States. But the mandate to destroy them was, as I noted, taken seriously. You can see an editorial here. Someone was writing back home to their hometown newspaper and says, "Some of the V-discs mentioned I would give my right arm for." And the answer is, with the Army's practice of destroying all masters, it doesn't seem likely a solution will be found. It seems criminal, though, to destroy some of the greatest jazz ever put on wax. So another veteran wrote to his local newspaper's veterans column in 1948, asking if there was any way to get a copy of a Glenn Miller V-disc, only to be told, quote, "Sorry, but the name bands made V-disc recordings for free with the understanding that they would not be released through commercial channels," you can see here. And so, like I said, the government really did go around confiscating bootleg copies that didn't get destroyed for years. I was once asked, after doing one of these programs, about the role of V-discs that got left behind overseas. And I was really intrigued by that question. It's something that I am continuing to explore. But I think it did a lot to continue to spread American musical stylings, American culture around the globe after the troops had started to come home. For example, this is a snippet I found in the historical record. It says, "American GIs are blessed for leaving their V-discs to the Italian locals. Italian radio now broadcasts these V-disc programs, and there are regular jam sessions," right? And so the presence of V-discs and therefore American music around the globe after the war had ended left a long-standing impact, long-standing influence on international music. This is just another example. This is a 1950 article about V-discs that were left behind in England. And it says, "Miller influence. Since the late Glenn Miller spent the latter years in England and turned out innumerable V-discs, hundreds of which have found their way into the hands of British record collectors, it can be expected that his music had a strong influence on all English bands. This influence has remained firm in English dance band styles, so it has been particularly interesting for us to watch the growing demand for the Miller style in the United States, right? So the V-discs had this unintended consequence of spreading American music stylings abroad. This is an interesting 1951 article about French bootleggers. Duke Ellington's lawyers have lodged a complaint through the American Embassy in Paris in an attempt to stop the activities of the French Jazz Society record label. Duke has been one of the chief victims of this bootleg outfit, right? And so some of the artists were like, hey, we didn't get paid for this. No one else should be making money off of it, certainly. So it's interesting, and I hope to explore what happened to the Left Behind V-discs in greater detail. But let's take a listen to another sample. Now, by the 1990s, for a number of reasons, many of the artists involved in creating the V-discs had passed. Contracts were certainly expired. Some of the record companies didn't exist anymore. But for a number of reasons, by the 1990s, compilations of the V-disc music were being sold on cassette and later on CD. Today, anyone who is interested can stream much of the V-disc catalog online, either on YouTube or via the Library of Congress, because historians and musicologists have taken the effort to go out and try to collect as many of these recordings that survive as possible. And so again, if you check on YouTube or the Library of Congress, you can, through the powers of streaming today, sit at your computer and listen to many of these gorgeous compositions. Let's conclude before our Q&A with two more listens. The first one's going to be Glenn Miller, who was obviously one of the most popular band leaders of the late 30s and early 40s, with songs such as Moonlight Serenade and Tuxedo Junction. In 1942, Miller enlisted in the U.S. Army and was assigned to lead the Army Air Force Band. He boosted the morale of troops both with his V-discs and his many in-person performances before mysteriously disappearing on a flight from England to Paris. Tucker, who may be a bit less familiar a name to you than Glenn Miller, but Tommy Tucker, a famed band leader, settled in New Jersey in his later years and even taught on the faculty at Monmouth University. So it's my prerogative to end with a fellow Monmouth University professor, Tommy Tucker.
Hello, boys. This is Tommy Tucker with Amy Arnell, Don Brown, Kerwin Somerville, and all the gang on this speed disc just for you. We hope you'll like it.
I'm tired of living alone. I'm fed up with cabarets, with pretending that I'm gay. I want to settle down in a home of my own. Do you know how it feels to be lonely? Do you know what it means to be blue? Do you ever find the tears and find that no one cares you? Well, I do.
So we will break it there. I think if you asked certainly many of my undergraduate students and perhaps members of the general public, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of music in wartime? Many people, think of the Vietnam War and protest music, right? And there's a whole other talk we could do on that. But in this instance, this was an example, the VDIS program, where the biggest names in the music industry rallied to support the war effort to the best of their capability. And that was by lending their voice, their celebrity, their music to boost the morale of the men and women who were doing the fighting. So I will break my prepared remarks there, and I would be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Yes, yeah.
Melissa, do the V-discs show up on eBay, the originals? And is it legal to buy them these days if they do?
You can find them on eBay. I have to restrain myself because I want to buy them all, and you really don't need them all. So yes, you can find them on eBay on occasion, and it is legal to purchase them now. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know Tommy Tucker, he lived in the West Islanders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was quite involved in local schools, at the K-12 level. I believe he had a music store, and he did teach at Monmouth. Did you know him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. We should chat more later. Duncan?
Something I always found interesting about the strike is it really boosted harmonica music.
Oh.
Harmonica players were not considered musicians, were looked down upon by the others, and were not in the union. So especially one group called the Harmonicats really took off. They had these big bass harmonicas and all kinds of things, and it got really popular.
I love it. That is a fascinating tidbit there, right? I think somebody said Bruce and Dylan, and I just watched the Billy Joel documentary. They all popped to mind as harmonica players. That's an interesting aside. Thank you, Duncan. Yes.
The Monmouth University. How did you come up with Bruce Springsteen's name?
Yeah, so how did Monmouth University come to be the home of the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music? Great question. A lot of people assume Bruce is a Monmouth alum because often celebrities, donate their papers to their alma mater. Bruce is not a Monmouth alum, but he's very familiar with our campus. He, of course, grew up locally in Freehold, and then grows his music career on the shore. And he played at Monmouth several times, both before and after he gets his recording contract. So he's very familiar with our campus, right? That's one aspect of the story. Now, what we now call the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music starts as a fan-based collection in the year 2001. Bruce Springsteen fans all over the globe, they collect stuff, right? They collect bootleg recordings and concert tickets and tour merchandise. There's a group of fans that came together, they pooled their collection, and they wanted to make it accessible for the public. They first had their collection at the Asbury Park Public Library, okay? And it was technically available for researchers to go visit. People write books and do documentaries about Bruce all the time, right? So it was there for researchers, for fans to go visit at the Asbury Park Library. It quickly runs out of space at the Asbury Park Public Library. They're wonderful, right? But they're like a local lending library. You go there to get your John Grisham. They're not a big research institution. So the collection ran out of space there, and long story short, it needed a new home. It wound up coming to Monmouth. So it comes to Monmouth in 2011, but at that point, it's the fan collected stuff. There's no official relationship with Bruce just yet. Now, my executive director is a gentleman by the name of Bob Santelli. Bob is a local guy. He grew up here at the Jersey Shore. He's a Monmouth alum. And then he worked as a music critic and journalist before helping to open both the Grammy Museum and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So he hears about, there's this fan-based collection that found a home at Monmouth. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually get Bruce involved? And so through Bob's relationship with Bruce, he tells Bruce about the collection. He pitches this idea of Monmouth being the home of Bruce's archive, in addition to the fan-based stuff. Bruce agrees to that in 2017. Now, the collection, the fan-based collection that came to Monmouth at first in 2011, did not go to the university library, where you might have expected it to go. They weren't staffed for it, they didn't have the space for it, so it went in this tiny Cape Cod house adjacent to the university, a formerly residential house. Well, once we became Bruce Springsteen's official repository, that little house was insufficient, right? More people want to come. We need more space. We really need exhibits for people to come look at stuff. And so it was decided that we will build the new museum. And so that's in a nutshell. I could do a whole hour on that as well. But in a nutshell, that's how it winds up coming to be at Monmouth. It starts as a fan-based collection. My colleagues, Bob Santelli and Eileen Chapman, who's another local player in the local music scene, they bring that collection to Monmouth. Then Bruce gets involved because he's a Jersey Shore guy, right? Where were his materials going to go? They could have gone to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Grammy Museum or maybe the Smithsonian, but he's a Jersey Shore guy. He could have raised his family anywhere in the world that he wanted to, but where did he choose to do it? Here in Monmouth County. And so it makes sense that he would want it close. I will also note that it was Bruce who insisted it not just be about him, that it not just be the Bruce Springsteen Archives, that it also be the Center for American Music, so that it could be a true place for learning, both for Monmouth University students and for the bus loads of field trip students we hope will be visiting our new facility come next year. Sorry, it's hard to answer that question quickly, but I hope that answered the question. Yes.
Thank you for presenting, Melissa. And I feel like I should know this as a public affairs NCO, but what is the connection, or what is the lineal descent from this to AFN or something similar?
Yes, we were just talking, Sam, Rich Russo, music journalist, DJ, was just in my office and talking about how this program kind of gives way to Armed Forces Radio Network, where they then are just playing the commercial recordings, right? So under this program, because of the very unique circumstances of the strike, they were able to make unique recordings. The idea that music was so popular spurs the growth then of Armed Forces Radio Network, but then they're playing more commercial releases. Although, again, I'm giving Rich Russo a shout out, I'll have to tell him to watch this recording later. He was just telling me that there are special records that are released for the government to use. So even though it's the commercial recording, we've got to look for one that is a Bruce recording that we've got to find, or a rare Bruce record that was issued for Armed Forces Radio Network. Yes.
Do you take donations? I have some records of my parents from World War II, the old 78s.
We do. So I'd love to give you my card so we can connect afterwards. As a historian, I want to take everything. Right? But what's the problem with taking everything? You don't have enough space. So we always engage in conversations with people who are interested in donating things. And if we think that it can help our mission, if we think that we can steward it properly, then we're happy to have it. So we'll talk more after. Yes.
Let's talk about where people can watch this after. And let's talk about Facebook, because I like asking the visitors, where did they hear this about this? And one heard about it from Facebook. I said, oh, Melissa's or the museum's. And he said, no, it was a friend who's a musician.
Oh, okay. That's good. That means people were spreading the word. Oh, Jay Sweet is a music professor at Monmouth, right? And so Jay, I think he's an adjunct professor, and then he runs like a music school, and he's a musician, and yes. So I'm glad people are spreading the word about the great program that you do. If I may just divert for a minute, Carol, Andrew, everybody here, Duncan, everybody here at the museums, Joseph does such incredible work, and I am so proud to know them and to occasionally work with them.
Thank you.
We're proud of you.
Okay, so let's break there then. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful job, that's all.